Welcome to the Listen to This Bull live show. My name is Matt Mulholland. That's Remington Huggins. We are going to talk to you guys about bullshit in the insurance world yet again, because that's what we do on this show. If you've never seen the Listen to This Bull show, well, shame on you. Also, welcome. And we talk about bullshit, and we are very conversational toned. I'm going to have a beer during the show. We're going to include some people on here. We're going to ask some questions, but the benefit of you watching this live is you get to participate. All you have to do is put a comment in wherever it is that you're watching this from. And if it's a good enough question or a good enough comment, we'll put it on the air and we'll answer those things. We'll answer whatever it is you want. You know, this is a show that is driven by the audience. So today we have the last. I don't even want to say it because I know I'm going to see disappointment in Remington's face the second I do it. We're doing a show about AI drones. Oh man, you've got the attorney face on.
You said the last one, right?
Yeah.
Let's get to it.
We've done all the other ones that exist. We're going to do RoofHawk today, but let me go ahead and kick things off the right way by pushing this button. Oh,
Had to mess with something real quick.
yeah, apparently.
Better.
Here it goes. Coming back. All right. So we got RoofHawk Ryan Fontaine in the background. Before I pull him on, I want to say something real quick. For all of you that have seen the show and seen the many times that we have had conversation about inspections using drones, one thing that we haven't had is the nerd that writes the code. We got that today. I have a nerd for you. His name is Ryan. And here he is. Hey, Ryan.
Guys, how are you?
Doing good. How are you doing?
Oh, not bad. I don't think I've had quite that introduction before, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I bet not.
Welcome to
Is
Listen
it
to This
inaccurate?
It is accurate, and I'd probably take it a step further in that nerds run the world. So
That's true. It's 100% true.
I have never been offended by being called that.
I haven't either. I think Remington probably has. He's got that whole jock vibe to him.
I don't think I've ever been called a nerd, so
Yeah, probably not. I don't know if I would ever call you a nerd. And unless we're talking about hunting. You're a hunting nerd for sure.
Yeah, I'm a hunting nerd. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, him and I will have that in common then.
Of course there is. And you can be a nerd about anything. Or maybe it's a geek. Is there a difference? I always get this backwards. Is a geek the one that's like super into one thing?
You know, I don't know if there's actually a formal definition. I just enjoy being the nerd because when you were called a nerd in school, it was really a compliment at the end of the day. It was meant as an insult, but it's really, you're so good at this that all I can do is just call you a nerd. So That's all I'm going to do. Like, I mean, Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or whoever, they're nerds of the film room in the NFL. I don't think that's really an insult.
Steve Patrick says that you're also a hunting nerd. So maybe we can turn this from a drone inspection podcast to hunting.
Oh, it could go downhill quickly with that.
Yeah. If we have nothing but hunting metaphors the whole night, I'm okay with it, gentlemen.
Sounds good.
Good deal. You opened up that door.
Yeah. I was expecting one right away after I said that. I got nothing so far. You know why? Because hunting's boring.
Well, don't worry. We'll put something downrange for you pretty quick.
There you There you go.
All right. I'm gonna let Remington steal the show for a second because we've done so many things about drone inspections. I want to know, do you think that we've beaten the dead horse? Is there anything left unturned? What do you think, Remington? Is there anything left that we have to talk about?
How about this? I'm not going to say that because there's always something new, especially with technology and so forth, but we've done our due diligence. I can confidently sit here and say that. And I think that's fair to say. But if something new comes along, which we all know there probably will be in the next 6 to 12 months, when it comes to drone inspections, because it is new. It's not like this has been around for 15 years. When there's something new, there's always something that's going to come up, especially when you're dealing with insurance, dealing with claims. So, hey, as it comes, let's tackle it. Let's do our due diligence. That's how I feel about it.
Well, is there something new, Ryan? I mean, is there a lot of new stuff all the time?
Well, we can break into two parts. We'll break it into the front end, which we'll call the drone on the front end, and on the back end would be the AI. On the front end, you're pretty much going to be maxed out fairly soon on the visual spectrum. So the cameras themselves, you're at the new DJIs are at 48 megapixel. Yes, you'll always see a difference between 48 megapixel and then say 60 and then 80 and then 100. You'll see, but it's kind of the difference between going from old school TV, which I hope we're all old enough to understand before HD TV happened, to HD. All of us went, oh my God, I can't believe this is this clear. And then you went HD to 4K and you're like, wow, this is even better. If you go to a store and you stand next to a good 4K TV and a new 8K TV, you're probably going to be fairly hard pressed to see a big difference. You might notice subtle things like maybe the blacks are a little crisper, or maybe there's a little less motion blur on certain things. But overall, there isn't a wow. And that's why you don't see everyone clamoring to go buy 8K TVs. Humans, we don't see that big of a difference. And then if you go into like the 16s and all of them that are coming down the line in a few years, it'll be even less dramatic, because we're kind of reaching where 1% here and there isn't really going to move the needle. So on the visual end of drones, you're starting to approach that, where most people can't pick out the difference between a 48 megapixel camera and a 60 megapixel camera. It's fairly hard to do. And especially if you're doing something just like a roof inspection or an inspection on site, there's not going to be a huge difference. You go from 12 to 48, huge difference. And that's where you've already absorbed that leap. Where I'd say on the front end that you're going to see a bigger revolution coming up in the next few years. And this is probably more in the 1 to 5 year range, is the addition of the non-visual spectrum and the availability of it at a cheaper price point. So you're talking thermal, you're talking LiDAR, you're talking things that we use that are in, say, $10,000 or $20,000 drones, and we use on different AI projects for like precision agriculture and things like that, farm fields. Of course, you got military applications of those as well. You're going to see that technology get pushed down to where now a $2,500 drone not only has a 48 megapixel camera, but has a 640 thermal camera and has LiDAR measurement capabilities. That's when you're going to have almost an all-in-one solution for an inspection of a property, rather than having it being different tools right now. Like right now, you can have a thermal camera on a drone, again, $8,000 to $10,000 price point. Well, that's going to show you water intrusion, water penetration, heat getting in or out of a building, stuff that it lights up like the 4th of July. It's easy to see. So that's available, but just at a higher price point. Then you start getting into LiDAR. Now you can have anybody, a contractor, an adjuster on the roofing side, or in the construction sense, a GC, run it over. Now you have basically sub-millimeter, or at least definitely sub-centimeter measurements of, say, a construction site or a field that you're about to level out to build an apartment complex or whatever. Now you know all the elevation change. And of course, with LiDAR, you could measure a roof, I would say, more accurately than a tape measure. So, especially probably more accurate than satellite imagery. So that would be where I'd say the biggest thing
is. This is more of a hardware issue, though, isn't it? You're going to end up having to have your users use much higher end drones to be able to have those capabilities.
You will, and that's why you don't see it right now, because those drones, I mean, if you start putting LiDAR sensors on drones, you're talking $30,000 per drone minimum. You're talking way up there in price. But as that technology compresses, that price will come way down and compress as well. And so that's why I'd say 1 to 2 years for the thermal to be in the $2,000 range, and probably 5 years, give or take a little bit, for the LiDAR to come down into that range. That would be on the front end of the drones, probably the biggest the biggest things coming down the pipe from a tech perspective. But then, of course, on the drones, you've also got the regulation perspective that's coming as well, where, right now 107 is highly advised, whereas, 5 years, you might not be able to take your drone up off the ground if you can't type in your 107 pilot license code and all of that. So,
What
and
would be
that's
the way they could do that? I've been wondering how they would ever do that.
there's going to be a crackdown at some point. The more drones you put up, the more risk you have something going wrong. And of course, the easiest way to do that is through licensing. Just like you can't go to the airport, hop in a plane, say, "Hey, I'm going to take off," and go. There's restrictions.
Also, you don't own the plane.
Well, that would be a problem too. But even
hijacking.
if you did,
Right.
so there's
some other laws involved in that one.
Yeah, the guy out of SeaTac found that one out when he took that plane for a joyride. So
I think he knew.
I think he had a feeling that landing was going to cause some issues for him in life. But the that was what I say on the drone front end. Other than that, the drones overall, they're pretty standard at this point. They're all going to be quadcopters. You're going to have some that are heavier lift with, octocopters, but overall, they all fly the same. The smart controllers are becoming much more standard than using your iPhones. Like, all those trends are well established. And I'm sure you guys have talked about it plenty of times on here. We don't really need to rehash the stuff that's pretty much becoming commonplace now. But that's where I'd say on the front end of the drone, you'll see the biggest changes.
Okay. So with that hardware improvement, then the software improvement has to come. But I can tell you this, the concept of AI is very different than reality of AI. And I've learned that a lot by having conversations with you at different places. My phone is blowing up for no good reason. Machine learning is a different animal than what people are anticipating. Can you give a synopsis to the audience on what the difference between what they're probably thinking is AI versus reality?
Sure. I presented a lot of different AI events, and especially when it's not a bunch of nerds in the room, the general perception, and I usually started off in my slides even with the T-1000 Terminator robot. This is not what AI is. Like, we're not building this. We're not even close to building this. Right now,
but we did for the movie.
We did for the movie. A lot of CGI in there. I don't think those could move very well. But it's one of those where that's not really where AI is at. AI right now is a highly useful tool that finally the hardware has caught up to the theoretical principles of it. Like, we're inventing some new algorithms in AI and machine learning, but a lot of the stuff that we use is math that's been around for decades, if not centuries and millennia. It's just now the hardware can produce a result fast enough to make it useful. And that's really what has caused this AI boom. So you've got the NVIDIAs, the AMDs, Intels. Their chips are so advanced now and can do this where it provides a good result in a quick enough time to make it a useful, actionable condition, basically. And so AI right now is just a powerful tool. ChatGPT is a great example. When ChatGPT came out, there was a lot of hype about, oh my God, this is going to cost so many people their jobs. Well, now you've kind of seen the flaws come out of ChatGPT, that it's not necessarily always accurate, but it's very useful. If you type it into ChatGPT, like, write me a press release to announce that I'm coming on this today, it can do a pretty good job.
Did you do that?
I did do that, but then I forgot to send it out. So I got a little busy. I apologize. But it gave a pretty good result, but it's robotic. It was very robotic in it. So you can get it to give you like an 80% template, and it cuts many hours out of your time to get that done. A lot of humans, we have a name for it. It's called writer's block. If you were to say, write me this email, write me this press release, write me this article, you're going to sit there for probably 3 times as long as you should, trying to think of, oh my God, where do I start? Like, where am I going to start this? I don't understand where to start. Type it in a ChatGPT or Baird or wherever you want to type it in, because there's all sorts of different NLP models now. but
All of us know what NLP means.
Natural language processing.
Oh, thank
It
you.
is not neural
That was
linguistic
for the audience,
programming.
not for me. I
That's
know
a
what it was.
that's a copywriting thing. That's a
Okay.
author human thing. But natural language processing. So think of it as a computer understanding English. And so when we have all these models out there, it's a great tool to get you started. I don't think many people would want to read articles written by AI right now.
No, it's horrible.
It really it's not good because it gets you 80% of the way, but us humans we kind of want more than 80%. Like no one really wants 80% of anything. We want to get into the 90s before we feel we got our money's worth. And
I feel like
so
there's a
that's
joke
really
there.
kind
I'm
of
gonna let it pass.
that's kind of the state of AI, is that we'll get you most of the way, but it's not going to be an end all be all solution in any field. That's why self-driving isn't a thing. Now you can one of the best self-driving ones I've seen is by General Motors, and I know now Ford has it with Blue Cruise, but GM Super Cruise. So my wife has an Escalade, and we have that in there, but it only works on federal highways. Now, if you think about how complex of an environment you have in urban driving, you can see why AI may not be a great idea right now. There's tens of thousands of variables, some of which we can't even come up with because we as drivers have never experienced them, but they've happened. Whereas on a highway, you have a low variable environment. You're all driving the same way on a segmented road. There's usually a barrier or at least a large ditch between you and the traffic going the other direction. There's limited on-ramps and off-ramps. None of them are at a direct 90-degree angle either. They all are fairly gentle and sloping coming off the highway. Wildlife, and especially children and human beings, are typically not on highways. They can be, but they're typically not running around. You're generally not going to see a soccer ball going across a 6-lane highway. It's generally not something you have to do or have to worry about. So by them taking a fairly, or as with self-driving anyways, as close to a closed track environment as you can get without it actually being on a track, that was a smart move by them. And it's very useful. We drive a lot as a family, and hitting that button and having it you can just relax as the driver. You still have to look up. You can't just, go read a book or take a nap. But overall, you're not doing this the whole drive on the steering wheel. So it's a very useful technology. But again, it's taking a low risk approach to AI, which is usually what we see doing well in AI these days, is taking out a repetitive task in a somewhat controlled environment and automating that.
It makes sense. You got to start somewhere, right? The low probability of an accident and so forth. Let's start there. Let me ask you this, Ryan. When you read an article online, can you tell if it was AI generated or not? Like right out the
Vast
gate?
majority of the time, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you may not get it in the first paragraph or two, but you start to see the AI repeat itself, just in different ways. So instead of, and I'm making this up, it wouldn't be this obvious, but if you were saying, if in the first paragraph it says roof and then roofing, and then it goes structure over your house, and the third paragraph is probably written by AI. It's trying to be different, but it's running out of things to be different about, and it's kind of just repeating the same concepts.
You can tell it a lot on the naming conventions of videos and stuff. There's a lot of AI that are trying to provide a clickbait kind of a title. I've used it quite a bit. My VA that produces or creates the images and things is trying to use it, but I turn it down every single time because it's so obviously, it's like it's trying to be poetic, but it fails at it. I called out Chris Pratt with ZightView about an article that they had just posted. He sent it over to me. I was like, so how much of this was Chat GPT? And he's like, why do you say that? I was like, because all of it was written by Chat GPT, wasn't it? And it's exactly right. It's repetitive. It repeats the same points simply without really going into detail in different ways. And it'll come back, and it's just annoying. It's annoying, but it does give you a good starting place.
It does. It gives you a good starting place. And RoofHawk is kind of the same way. And I will say there's they say that, a picture's worth 1,000 words. When it comes to AI, it's worth like 1,000,000. It's much harder to do stuff with photos than it is to do it with text data or numerical data. That stuff we got down pat. That's why your credit card fraud alerts are so accurate these days. We got numerical data pretty much down pat. That's not really an area of AI where you're going to see a lot of advancements in the next 10 years. We've pretty much solved that problem for the most part. When you get into photos and you get into stuff like roof inspections or just a photo analysis in general, satellite analysis, you get a lot of data coming in and there's a lot of permutations of that data. And so when you put AI into there, you have to be fairly on top of how you're managing and integrating that data. And that's where we try to take out the robotic part of say a chat GPT model where it learns to be robotic, and we insert humans into the mix and say, okay, you're a subject matter expert, SME for short, on hail detection. We want you to come in and we want you to go through these photos and maybe do a couple of roof walks, whatever we're going to do, and show us what is hail and or what is wind damage, although wind's a little easier, and go through all of those. And then the AI starts to learn. It's called semi-supervised learning. And that's really where a lot of stuff with RoofHawk and a lot of other applications really starts to take hold, is that you're basically taking experts that are human and putting their brain into algorithms. And that's really what I think the future of AI is going to hold in the next 5 to 10 years.
Very interesting mental image.
Well, it's how you're going to get good results on complex problems. It's just the only way that's going to work.
Right.
You wouldn't teach self-driving by someone who's 8 years old. They've driven maybe a Power Wheel, and I have kids that are a little older than 8 now, and they drove Power Wheels like I would not want them driving cars. So you gotta take the subject matter and make sure that you're an expert, and then you start building the AI out from there.
You ever ridden one of those green machines?
I don't think I've taken one of those.
It's got the steering in the back wheels. It's like a big wheel, but the back wheels are the ones that steer instead of the front wheel. So you got these arm bars that twist like this, and you can spin out. So back before Toys R Us went out of business, you can barely fit in them as an adult, but they're a lot of fun to go around the halls of Toys R Us on, squeezed up into this thing, just because you could spin around corners and do all the Tokyo drifting and shit like that.
Suddenly, I wish there was a Toys R Us around us so we could get video of you doing this.
Oh my God. Well, they're out of business now, so they're gone. COVID did them in, I think, or Amazon,
or I was about to say Amazon,
or probably all of that.
Yeah. Amazon probably released it, the COVID. I mean, anyway, so when you're trying to train an AI to learn something, then you have to use the subjectivity of the person and their bias on whether or not something is or isn't hail. And you do that by having them do it over and over and over again as many times as possible so that they have enough sample points to be able to draw from and create a machine learning path that allows it to identify hail. But what happens when some dude with a hail cannon discovers that most of the crap that we know to be hail from lab testing is false?
We invite him in to do an audit and go through his perspective as well. And so we don't ever take just one person's opinion. We have a committee, and it's multiple people. That way you can't say, so Steve Patrick leads the committee, but you can't say, oh, this is just Steve Patrick Hale, or, oh, this is just this person's opinion. You kind of go by majority vote. And that's how you build out that without having as much human bias as you can. Now, some always creeps in, but we try to take in pretty much everybody's side, whether you're an IA, a PA, insurance carrier, a roofer, as long as you're an experienced roofer, you're always welcome to tell us yes or no on hail hits, but it still has to go through everyone else. That way you're not having maybe somebody who has a high bias or doesn't have an education level on what hail looks like. You're not letting them influence the data too much. Like, I know a lot of companies want to crowdsource data labeling, which is what this is. You're labeling the data. That's hail. That's not hail. That's blistering. That's hail. So you're labeling it. A lot of companies want to crowdsource that. And not just in roofing, but just in the industry as a whole. The problem
Meaning getting the audience to identify what it is or isn't without having to have an expert come in to do it.
And there's a big problem in that in an industry that's regulated. And I know that roofing can be considered the Wild West, but you have an ending regulator called court. And this claim goes in front of a committee or goes in front of a judge or a jury, you're going to have to explain how you got the knowledge into the AI. And if all you do is say, well, we crowdsourced it, you can run into problems. And there's a reason you've probably never been approached, even online. Is this bone broken? Is this cancer? Is this some horrific disease in Africa? We're not disease experts. And that is a system that at the end of the day has huge ramifications for being wrong. And in roofing, while you don't have maybe life or death ramifications of being wrong, you still have introduced weakness into your data that shouldn't be there potentially. You've now, by crowdsourcing it, because you don't know how experienced the person that's marking that as not hail is. That's why keeping our audit committee as only experts, if we had to, here's who's on it, here's their audit record, and here you go. You lose that.
You're showing the same images to those experts and having them vote on whether or not they think it's hail, and it's almost democratic in its own way. That is very interesting. Remington, alternative dispute resolution possibilities are popping up in my head. Could a tribunal of people, not appraisers, am I describing appraisal in its own way? Could there be a group of experts? This sounds like appraisal the more I think about it, that come together on a claim and say, all right, I vote that this is damaged by hail. I vote that this isn't damaged by hail. And whatever they decide ends up being binding. Is that appraisal? Am I saying appraisal?
I wouldn't say, well,
do you know what I'm trying to say? What's the difference here?
Yeah. But see, in appraisal, hang with me here. In appraisal, there's agreed upon, there is a loss. Let's talk about the cost of replacing the covered damages, right? Let's get, I mean, that's big picture. That's what appraisal is.
That's a cost analysis thing.
Yeah. It's not a yes or no. It's where does this fall versus hail damage is yes, this is hail damage, or no, it's not. In a sense, I mean, that's what engineers are doing, right? Oh, no, this is not hail damage. Oh, well, I'm gonna hire my engineer and he's gonna say it is hail damage, and here we are, right?
Right.
So
could there be an actual unbiased group of experts that call balls and strikes on behalf of claims? Maybe it would have to be a government-led entity for it not to be someone that's hired from the carrier or the policyholder.
Yeah, that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not, right?
Plus, let's
I mean, that's
what Ryan said. Like,
hey, who's going to call the balls and strikes? Are going to be the jury or judge, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, like you package up this argument and say it is hail damage or it's not. Everybody has their different opinion on it, and let them call it as a ball or strike, like you said. There's never going to be, in my opinion, I mean, it's just, I'll just say it. There's never going to be a governmental entity that's going to say yes or no to that. There's too much on the line.
Sure.
I think where you may end up with AI is it becomes more of an influence or a tiebreaker in situations. And the main reason I say that is that at some point, it's going to be very difficult for someone to dispute an AI conclusion. And where that line is, I don't know. And it varies from industry to industry. I mean, you know, you probably don't want an AI doctor right now. but in 20 years, you're probably going to have a human that's only reviewing what the AI said, and they're more of a translator than they are doing anything analysis on their own.
Right.
Because
It's Star Trek. We want the robot handling it because they have very steady hands. And everyone knows that if you get in a car accident, then the only choice that you have left is to become a wizard, like Doctor Strange.
Now,
There you
what
go.
if the
There's-
ADR process is, what if there is a dispute between the carrier and the policyholder, and the ADR, alternative dispute resolution, is to send out an AI drone to say
AI.
yes or no, right?
That's kind of where I was getting at a little bit. Yeah. There's something there.
And the reason's going to be, because I got a little sidetracked with the medical analysis or imagery there, but at some point you're going to have so much data in these AI models that you're going to say, okay, well, this AI, so RoofHawk's trained on over 1 million images now. So at some point you're going to have 10 million, and then you're going to have 100 million. And at some point you're going to say, look, there's 100 million images in here that perfectly define claims, not inspections, but claims that were bought and paid for and agreed by both parties that there's damage, that this roof was bought for hail. Here's the markings from AI. So you have at least a little bit of evidence that everybody agreed on this particular storm hit. And you're going to have hundreds of millions of those, or at least tens of millions of those. And at some point, the data is so overwhelming that you are really having to argue so uphill that unless you have a complete system malfunction, you're kind of going to have to side with the AI just because of the volume of data that is bringing to the table. That just becomes, it's like climbing a mountain at some point. You're just better off saying, no, there's damage.
It would, the only thing that could come into question then would be the data that's put in. So if it's a carrier-owned AI that has put in a lot of information, was it biased information? Were they looking only for functional damage in their photos? Is it Haig's AI? Are they only looking for Haig's definition of damage, not necessarily the definition of damage from a policy that does or does not exist, or something along those lines? And how much? You have 1 million photos. How many of those contradict to other photos? So it almost negates a handful of them.
Well, you shouldn't have it contradicting other photos if they're all taken within scope. And that's what at RoofHawk, we invite everyone in.
I mean, there's going to be differences and variables depending on climate, how old something is, the coloration of the materials. Different material consistencies are going to make something that looks like hail not hail for something else, which could end up being a contradiction in your system.
But the AI will take those variables into account. It'll say, okay, there's granule loss, so we need to adjust the weights on its own, but there's no human involvement in that. So it will account for environmental variables that are likely to occur. It's not something, so like if you had hail hit the roof and at the exact same time a meteor came in and hit the roof, that's going to throw the system wonky because it has no idea what the heck just happened and half the roof's missing or more.
Right.
It has no idea what to do there because let's face it, that's a ridiculous proposition, but mathematically that's still possible.
It does happen. People have had hailstones hit their kitchen table.
Yeah. And so it's
not like a lot, like a meteor shower might be from an Armageddon like movie.
Right. But it's not impossible, but it's very rare. And in those very rare situations, yes, humans have to take over. AI is very good at narrow thought. And there's actually two scopes of AI. One is AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. That's Terminator. That's us. We're good at a lot of things, and none of them have to be related. We can walk, we can run, we can talk, we can sing, we can speak loudly, we can be quiet. We can turn left, there's no limit really to what we're
ambi-turner.
Yes, exactly. And so there's no limit. So we're general intelligence. We can do almost anything we want to do. AI is nowhere near that right now. Okay. We're in artificial narrow intelligence, or ANI. And that narrowness is what gives AI, it gives us humans a lot of shot still to be the ultimate creature on the planet. Because once AGI happens, we're kind of screwed. But the narrow intelligence, it makes you an expert in a very narrow field. For example, the algorithms that we use at RoofHawk would be absolutely worthless in the medical world. It would not identify a broken bone. But you and I, after reading a couple of books, maybe a couple of weeks of training, can go, oh yeah, that looks like a broken bone, because we have artificial general intelligence. Well, we have real
can
general
extrapolate
intelligence
from
Right.
information that we read.
Complex
as well.
thought is not necessarily a benefit of AI right now. And the more complex a thought becomes and the more complex a skill set is, the more AI falls short. So
Just like being on the highway versus a back road with all the curves, right?
exactly. So the more
And
complex,
I'm going to go grab it. It's a tradition to grab a beer, so I'm going to go grab one for the show. I'll be right back. Literally 15 seconds. Okay. I'm sorry, guys. I'll let you geek out.
And Phil Pratt asked a question that actually.
I wanted to throw him up here because I called out his name earlier about using ChatGPT. So I better redeem myself. He says, I think the biggest problem or even a dispute is because we say it's hail detection AI. How is it possible to determine if hail caused the damage if we are just analyzing an image?
And a lot of that comes down to the megapixels of the camera. If you are doing something where they're going to push it so far that you need to like remove the shingles, get under a microscope, there's not really a lot that you're going to do with that. But that's not going to be the vast majority of the claims. The vast majority of the claims is really, because even look at it right now, they put out Ladder Now, Seek Now, all of these firms that get up there, and all they're doing is taking photos as well. So there's kind of already an implicit acceptance of photos.
I mean,
by the carrier.
if it's all desk adjuster approvals at this point, which is the vast majority of the claims that are going on, then it's exactly the same thing happening from a human's perspective, approving an image and whether or not they believe it was caused by hail. But this is all user interface as well. You've got users that are going to send it up. Are you asking them if there is collateral hail damage, or does your system look for collateral hail damage?
Well, our system right now is trained to look for hail and wind. We have tried to train out as best we can stuff that is mechanical, installation, or warranty related. So such things as blisters, footfall. And by the way, I apologize if I'm using the wrong term. I'm an AI nerd, not a roofing nerd. So I may throw out a term that you're like, what the heck is that?
That's what they do.
So
you said the word blister, so I'm going to pop this one up real quick. He followed up with, if hail hit a blistered roof, would the AI be able to isolate the hail hits only? And I definitely want to comment on this one as well, but I'll let you hit that first.
It would avoid most blisters, but probably not all. And I would say that if it hit perfectly on a blister, I don't know the lingo on that, but you would think that if it hit the blister, made the blister pop, that the hail's still responsible for the damage. But again, I'm using logic, so I'm not a roofer. But overall, yes, if it's blistered, and let's say, like, obviously Dallas, we get really hot summers, and there's a defect and it blisters and pops all on its own, there's no storm event. Typically, no, we won't mark those because they look visually different, typically, than a hail hit. Yes, there are exceptions, just like there are exceptions to every rule in life. But overall, we would avoid most of those blisters.
Yeah, so here's my thought on the whole blister thing. All right, blistered roofs get hit by hail. Can you separate it? Sometimes you can't. But you can still identify whether or not there is a difference on the hail-facing slopes versus the non-hail-facing slopes. And you can identify whether or not there has been a hail event. And whether you can separate it or not doesn't really make a difference from a policy perspective. Did the hail do anything? Did it affect the roof? And if it did, blistered roofs are more susceptible to hail damage. They're going to have more granule loss than a roof that isn't blistered. And just because it's more susceptible to the hail damage means you're going to have a different kind of looking hail damaged roof too. So there's going to have to be, in order for AI to really engage on this, I would suspect that they would have to have a whole set of blistered hail hit roofs for you to train the AI on what that would look like, to know that this is, there's hail that hit this because the roof was blistered, then it looks like this, instead of all hail hits look the same.
Correct. And really this comes down to, so we're way past the stage at RoofHawk of just wanting data. Now we want specific holes plugged. And it may be, we don't have hurricane force wind photos of a clay tile roof, we need more of those. So we reach out to our clients and say, hey, does anyone have these? Or if you have the ability to go get them, can you? And we've plugged those specific data gaps. And what you just mentioned with a blistered roof hit by hail would be a data gap. Right now, I'd say we'd probably still mark the hail just fine, but we probably wouldn't be able to extrapolate past that. And so the accuracy would be lower than, say, a regular roof that had no blistering, no prior damage, and gets nailed by hail.
Yeah.
So there will be gaps like that. And that's basically our job as AI people to come in and identify those gaps and try to plug them with not just data, but good data. So
since I have your ear and Phil Pratt's ear, both of you guys, which are AI drone dudes, one thing that you guys should focus your stuff on, if you get an opportunity, see if you can have your drones start identifying older hail damage and new hail damage on the same roof and discern between those things. That would be very useful. I've got Law Boss and Steve Patrick arguing in the commentary, which is glorious in its own way. This is kind of cool. So I'm glad Remington came back, and you might want to open that beer for this comment if you haven't already. Law Boss says, Haig would argue that tactile inspection is required to determine whether a fracture of the shingles reinforcement has occurred. A picture alone cannot prove up an internal fracture. Remington, since this is from Law Boss, I figure I'll let you have this one right away. How much does it matter what Haig argues on a claim?
Well, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter at all, because typically when you get a Haig report, it's from a licensed engineer, yada, 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 right? So it does hold some weight. However, their methodology can be attacked. And, I've attacked it multiple times in depositions in multiple states. But look, and just like Ryan said earlier, or actually, I think it was you, Matt, that's like, well, if AI is following this specifications from, I'm not going to just say Haig, but, a carrier-friendly engineering firm versus a public adjusting friendly firm or a policyholder specifications, you're going to get different results. There's just no doubt about it. Just like the engineers, like they have a different opinion about things, just like anybody in any profession. Medical doctor. I'm just saying that because Ryan brought up a medical analogy earlier. Everybody has a different thing. So does it hold weight? Yeah, it does. I mean, you get in front of a jury and say, look, this is a licensed engineer. He's done 4,000 inspections. Like, they get some credibility, but you can attack their methodology and their credibility at the end of the day.
So what I'd like to say about that real quick, and Steve Patrick is making the same point. Let me read Steve Patrick's point. His argument back was Haig's requirement of bruising is not required. 99.9% of property policies extend coverage for cosmetic shingle damage. And other than that percentage, Steve is right. Most likely that percentage came right out of his ass. But that's fine. For the most part, he's right. I think we all get the idea of what he's trying to say. Even Haig has written about that in their own blogs when they're talking about what is or isn't damage according to an insurance policy. They have said that most courts of law that have talked about it agree that cosmetic damage is damage, even though they teach to only look for functional damage, and they've defined functional damage themselves. So the real question is, whose definition of damage should be used? Ryan, whose definition of damage does RoofHawk use?
We use 5 different experts that are IAs and PAs. We actually do not care what our report says as long as it's accurate. Like even though a good chunk of our clients are contractors, we tell them all the time, we're not here building this technology to get you more roofs. We're here really for the policyholder to be made whole for what they paid for. And if there is damage, then pay per policy. But we also don't want roofers going up there causing damage, getting claims that maybe they have 3 hail hits and there's nothing wrong with the house. That if they pay $50,000 for that roof, we all pay higher premiums to make up for that with something that they shouldn't have bought. So at the end of the day, to be honest with you, we don't really care which side of the table the RoofHawk report falls on, as long as if we got 3 to 5 independent people that have no interest in how the claim goes. And that's the biggest thing with RoofHawk. We don't get paid more if the roof is bought. The report cost is the report cost. There's no added benefit for us choosing to say there's more damage or not, but everyone else has a financial interest in the claim. Like if we ever had to go in front of a judge, the only people in there that don't have a vested interest in the outcome of the case is us, the judge, and the jury. Everyone else has financial stuff on the line with a yes or a no. So we really want to maintain that true independence of, no, that's not hail, that's blistering. Has nothing to do with a hail event. Don't file a claim, homeowner, because that's not right. What's going on. Sure. By the same token, a carrier might came out and half the roof is missing from wind damage, and they say, no, that's not related. And we want that to stop too. And if that means that they've got to reprice their risk on the carrier side, so be it. If it means certain roofing companies don't pull shenanigans, so be it. At the end of the day, it's about doing what's right for the policyholder with the data that's available at the time. And these photos and the RoofHawk AI is just more data to put in the pile. The only difference is it's not influenced by anybody. Nobody can come in and edit our reports. Right or wrong, RoofHawk stand on its own. You cannot go in and go, oh, I don't agree with that hail hit in this report, I'm going to delete it. Not a thing. I've never seen that in AI, and that's just not a thing. Don't ever do that in an AI project if you ever develop one. Because the result should stand on its own. Yes or no, live or die, fail or not. So you can't do that. And the data that comes in, as long as it's within scope, is going to be fairly accurate on it because of the people that trained it. And that's why people like both of you come on in and tear apart RoofHawk. We want people to come in and perfect this. Saying, hey, I think you got this wrong and here's why, is more knowledge for the AI. So even if you had someone from the carrier side come in and say, hey, we disagree with these hail hits, let's have a discussion. If you can convince the IAs and PAs that are in there that, oh, you know what? All right, you know what? We do agree with that. That's the best solution for everybody. Let's get that done. Okay. I'm just here to make the AI smart. I'm not the person who has the brain to do it. You guys all do. And I know, Matthew, you're an expert in roofing too. But Steve Patrick and the other IAs and PAs, we rely on you guys, and just the fact that and we don't bring everyone into the audit committee, because if you have a bias, we don't want you in here. And it's because we don't want you trying to steer the data a certain way. We want this just to be yes or no, it happened or it didn't. And even then, you might get RoofHawk to say, yeah, there's damage. You still might need a hail trace going, yeah, there's 2¼ inch hail right at this address. You still may need other data points to convince the carrier, but RoofHawk plus hail trace plus other data plus all of that, you're definitely going to have a bigger edge in getting it approved. Or on the carrier side, if you got a roofer that is just hammering the homeowner to file a claim and get something paid, and we come back and there's nothing on that roof, by all means, deny it. You're not going to hurt our feelings.
I mean, a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, as long as the data's right, the data's right. It doesn't matter really where it falls, to be honest with you, with me at least.
So law boss has come back to say, in court, an expert must discuss the methodology utilized to form the opinion and must survive a Daubert challenge. I love the concept of AI drone's ability to document physical condition. And I agree, because it is, especially if you don't have the ability to edit the report or put a slider on it to say that this is, we want as accurate as possible, slide for bias. Without that feature, then you could legitimately say that this is a third-party opinion.
Correct. And that's
If
why
you
we
can
have
say
it that way.
that an AI is a party, I guess.
Right. And that's why we have it that way. And that's why we document everything on the back end. All of our data, if I mean if you wanted to go through it and you're a lawyer, I mean, you'd be there for probably years going through all of it, because like I said, there's over 1 million photos. But if you really want to, here you go. There's no secret that we want, like, oh my God, if they discover this, something is going to happen. Like, no, we want you to know how this works, because we want this to hold up and be a trusted source. So it's not something where we want to hide any of the data. That's why we do a lot of the logging and a lot of the auditing that we do. And trust me, Steve and the committee have spent a lot of time in this very room pointing at a TV. Maybe you guys have seen it on Facebook where he's pointing at a TV and going, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. There's been a lot of effort by people to get this accurate outside of myself. But it's always, we want someone to break it. We want someone to show where the shortcoming is so we can fix it. Because you never know where something's broken until you discover the break. So it's a big thing. And I do agree that in court, you'd have to basically discuss the methodology, and that would be pretty easy to document in our case, because you can't change it. I mean, I know, Remington, you're obviously a good attorney. I mean, could you imagine someone coming up in front of a jury and saying, well, yeah, we had this AI report, but yeah, we deleted a couple of hail strikes out of there because, we didn't feel they're warranted. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but just as an AI person, I mean, I can feel the can of worms opening up that just happened.
Right. Absolutely. And it actually happens with real engineers sometimes, where you're like, well, why didn't you add this photo to your report? You conveniently left this out, and to me, it looks like damage. But yes, it goes with the same kind of lines. Well, I just wanted to delete this. No, I'm with you 100%, Ryan.
Yeah, there's an investigation right now among carriers in Florida. Well, at least there is supposed to be one where the carriers have deleted IA photos and captions for photos and other things that say damage or photos of damage have been removed, and changed their notes around. And obviously, that's not a good thing. And they're supposed to be we don't know if they're actually being investigated, because the state of Florida is a little bit different about things. I'll say it like that. But
I mean, the phrase would be, so you manipulated the data to get the outcome that you wanted.
I love it.
Yeah. I would say that saying that you manipulated data would probably one of the worst things you could say to a jury. And if you have to answer yes to that, that would be a bad day.
I don't know if it'll ever see a jury on that stuff, but that depends on whether or not the administration wants to investigate something fully or not. So there is all those kinds of things, and I appreciate the fact, and I've known this about RoofHawk. I appreciate the fact that there isn't what I call a bias slider involved. There's a lot of data that goes into these things. Ryan, you're accessible to ask questions to. For the most part, you're busy as hell, but for the most part, you're accessible to ask questions to. And I've thrown some weird ones at you over the years. And we always go down some strange, interesting paths, but you've listened to it, and you've actually considered most of the things that I've talked to you about, which is kind of cool. So we've gotten along really well. I really like the product. It's, I don't know if there is, for all of you that are watching this, I said at the beginning of this episode that this was the last drone AI episode we were going to do. And it's because we've done all of them, but I don't know which one's the best one. So don't ask me that question, because I don't actually have an answer. There's good and bad to everything. There's pros and cons to all of these. What I find the biggest pro about RoofHawk is that it doesn't care what your opinion is. They should call it honey badger. But it's decent. And on all of these, no matter which one you choose, is useful as a tool, as a third party, someone else saying that there could be hail, whether they call it hail damage or anomaly or something along those lines, and let you interpret what that means. I don't know how much that matters. It's more of a liability issue. I would prefer, if I read a report, that it literally said hail damage if the program thought it was hail damage. and not anomaly, because the word anomaly is going to be contested and it almost throws away the whole purpose of getting the drone inspection, even though the drone inspection company then has less liability for it. Personally, I really like the idea of it saying damage, but could that get me in trouble down the road? There's a lot of questions that go along those lines. What do you think about that? I think that's a good question. What's better?
I would say if you're going to build an AI in any field, it should use the terminology that the industry uses to describe what you're aiming it to learn. And so in our reports, we put this, I might mess up the phrasing a little bit, but this damage is consistent with a hail event. And so it's not necessarily saying this is hail, but it's consistent with what hail looks like in a storm event. This is consistent with wind damage. And I would say that that's what we try to do in most AI projects, regardless of field, is what terminology do you use and how would you, as an expert, explain this to someone else? Because that's what we'd want our reports and output to be done, because it's kind of already the accepted industry standard. So we don't need to reinvent AI and try to reinvent an industry and the verbiage on top of that. So whether it's medical AI or precision agriculture, or robotics, all of that, we try to use the output to be what they're already used to, rather than trying to say, hey, no, we're going to do the output and we're going to do it our way, because then they have to learn twice. They have to learn how to use the tool, and then they have to relearn how to interpret the tool, which most humans don't really want to do that. So in order to make it useful, you kind of have to give up one of those. And AI is so new, and especially when you throw in drones and all of that, you can't really give up the ability to teach them how to use the tool. You have to give up the ability of, you don't have to train them to interpret the results.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It does.
All right. Well, is there something that you're focused on now that is new? Are you guys starting to teach this thing something new, or are you still trying to hone in to get as accurate as possible on good tried and true?
I think we'll always be honing in on doing tried and true, but the biggest things that we do is we always up the algorithms. There's always new AI algorithms coming out. There's always new families coming out. Like the new one, it's probably not going to mean much to people here, but it's called vision transformers. And basically think of it as you have context of the image. Right now, there's not a lot of context. It's a lot of pattern matching. Whereas now the context of the vision transformers will say, okay, this is a circular type indent in the shingle. I'm going to look around there. Okay, the next circular type indent is more than 1 foot away. So it's unlikely to be mechanical damage. And it's also, oh, by the way, it's up on a really hard area to reach in the roof. So it's probably very unlikely a roofer came up there and hit it with a hammer to fake the hail damage. And oh, it's a sporadic pattern. And you kind of get a heat map of the slope saying, okay, this damage is definitely consistent with a weather event because of how random it is on the roof and how spread out all of that is. Right now, AI doesn't have that capability. It's much more pattern matching of what an acceptable hail strike looks like. The next phase of vision transformers, which we're helping develop here at Citadel, and I mean, everyone's on it. Name a big company, they're all over it. It's kind of the next frontier. That's really going to be the next one, where you add intelligence and context to an image on top of matching the pattern.
My audience would be probably upset with me if I didn't ask you what it is that you mean by the term mechanical damage.
So my very novice, been on one roof my entire life and learned very quickly that getting on is significantly easier than getting off. I will not forget trying to get off the roof. That sucked.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to get off. It's hard to get off safely.
Yeah, getting off safely. Yes, I could have jumped, but it was about 18 feet down, and that would have sucked more.
It would have been faster, though.
So I did learn a little bit. So my very limited knowledge, mechanical damage would be described as something that is not warranty, and it was either done by install or an inspection, and it was caused by human action rather than anything from the warranty or anything from a storm.
Would it surprise you to learn that Remington has done a deposition that says otherwise?
I would not, because I have like 0.001% the knowledge that both of you do. So that would not shock me at all.
Well, Remington, what did you find out in a deposition?
Well, it was I'm not going to name the engineering firm or the engineer at all, but I was deposing a engineer from the insurance carrier that they hired. And I simply asked, because they denied it because it was mechanical damage, what's your definition of mechanical damage? And they simply said, when an object strikes a shingle. And I said, okay, well, and there's something to this effect. I said, okay, well, if that's your definition of mechanical damage, let me give you this scenario. What if that object is a hailstone and it strikes a shingle and makes damage? Is that mechanical damage? And he said, well, I guess it is. And this is a very, 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 very popular engineering firm here in this country. But, that was the big picture of it. So,
yeah. Infamous,
and then it got settled very quickly. But
well, the last one from Phil Pratt, if you want to do that last one.
I'm going to pop that up real quick.
I like this one. And
let me read it for the audience that's listening real quick. This is Phil Pratt. Phil Pratt, by the way, is the owner of ZiteView, which is a competitor to RoofHawk. And he's been on the show a few times, and he's a good friend of mine. It says, this AI is not to tell you if that black mark is or is not hail. The AI is to help the user increase efficiency during the inspection process. I love the, will it get this claim overturned? Nope. I think that he's commenting on the fact that we were saying that it was not necessarily an anomaly, whether or not it is or isn't caused by hail. Is it damaged by hail? What do you think about this?
Well, I can agree with him that just because you have an AI report, you're not going to get something overturned. I think we can all agree that when a carrier digs in their heels, that's just what they're going to do. And you could have Jesus next to you saying, yes, I threw hail at this house, and it still wouldn't change their opinion. But most scenarios go like this.
Focus on that kind of thing.
But with most scenarios with RoofHawk, here's kind of how it goes. And I do appreciate Phil's perspective on it, because he's not wrong. But it's really about how you utilize the data. So let's say you're got an adjuster in the field. Roofer has done their inspection. They run a RoofHawk, and the adjuster comes out and for whatever reason is saying, no, I'm going to deny this. Okay, bring out the policyholder. Okay, Mr. Adjuster, I'm totally fine with that. We have a difference of opinion. I believe that it's damaged. You don't believe it's damaged. I ran AI that's been on over 1 million photos, tens of thousands of roofs, more than any human being has been on. And it also says that there's damage up there. And we can zoom in on these photos all the way down to the pixel level, and we can go over everything. So can you explain to the policyholder here why I think there's damage, AI says there's damage, and you don't think there's damage? Can you please educate us? And it's not that it challenges the adjuster, because RoofHawk has been wrong. AI will make mistakes. Maybe the roofer is also wrong. There is a more than zero chance that he or she may be right. But now you make them prove it. And because AI has been so mainstream now and everyone loves it so much, there are very few people that haven't experienced AI, whether it's Siri, Alexa, ChatGPT. All of us have used AI at this point. I don't know of any human in a modern country that hasn't used it at this point. So now you've put them kind of in the justification of, okay, well, here's what I think the difference is. It's mechanical damage. Okay, well, why is it mechanical damage? Okay, well, why is it not related to the storm? And you just get more data out of them ahead of time. It's not saying that they're going to be wrong, but now you have more data on your own as the policyholder and as a roofer to say, okay, here's where their position is. And you can even come at it very, very nicely and say, okay, I disagree with that. If I go back up there and get you photos that you would like that will prove that this is not mechanical, and it's say there's collateral damage on the fences, or there's leaves off the tree, or there's damage around like all over the metal gutters. And if I do that, can we then rediscuss this and say, okay, well, we need to take care of the policyholder here because we're still 2-1. I'm willing to come over a little bit to your side and get you more information. So it really reduces the hard no. And now they can't just go, not damage. Okay, we got to discuss this more. And by doing it in front of the policyholder, you're also educating them, because I'm not from Texas originally. I'm from Boston. We don't have hail up there. So the first hailstorm down here was, let me tell you, that was a different event that I ever had. Now, granted, Texas doesn't have nor'easters, but it was a heck of a weather event, and it was a huge hailstorm. It was the Wiley storm that went through people's roofs. Made me question why the hell I moved to Texas, to be honest with you. So I was glad that the local Texans said that's not normal. Hail happens, but not like that. But that's what gives you the edge. It's not gonna. We have had plenty of times where we've overturned prior denials. We're way into the hundreds at this point with every carrier. State Farm, Allstate, doesn't matter. Big, little, doesn't matter. But it still comes down to the data. It still comes down to presenting a case that this really is storm damage, whether it's with a RoofHawk or another AI company or a hail trace, some other piece of data to get you over the hump. If they really want to dig in and are just going to say no to everything, nothing's going to help you until you get to a jury and you get to a judge. It's honestly, unfortunately, just that simple. But this is a really powerful technology to get you the claims that may be contested now over the hurdle, so they get done right. The homeowner, the policyholder gets their home bought.
Yeah,
Ryan,
and I'll post up his final comment.
I want to say this, like what I'm going to piggyback off of what Ryan's saying. It never hurts to have more information that supports the policyholder having that roof replaced. And whether it's AI or somebody else that says, I believe this is hail damage, it helps. There's nothing to lose to have that report. Because like Ryan said, look, if the carrier is going to deny it, it's going to go through litigation. It's going to go in front of a jury. You can't tell me that piece of information is not going to help out, because it will. It certainly will. All the information that supports a coverage decision for a carrier or supports a policyholder's argument always helps. And if it's AI with a million photos that backs its conclusion that it is hail damage, I'm all for it. So I just want to leave that at that.
Phil wrapped it up with, thanks, guys. Not trying to be argumentative. Just think that anyone using AI needs to stop thinking that it's magic. And I think that's basically what Ryan has been saying as well, that there are flaws in the system. It's not perfect. It's not going to be perfect anytime soon. If ever,
it can't be.
But it's going to get pretty close. And as Remington says, everything is better than nothing. So I really like the idea of it for third party. I had a contest with Phil. It was man versus machine, where I did a roof inspection versus his Zeit View thing. And I still believe that I won that. I think that he thinks the other way around. But my inspection was a lot more detailed, and it's going to be because I'm able to have tactile inspection. I can look under the shingles that are loose. And that's something that, with the wind associated stuff, I've even talked to you about this. There's a lot of wind damage that is completely missed unless you can look under the shingles to see if there's any sheeting that has occurred and it laid back down or something along those lines.
And there's nothing that a drone's going to do about that.
No,
You're replacing the eyes with a camera. Fingers, trust me, I work on a lot of robotics. We're a long way from getting fingers.
We need articulating fingers on drones to make this happen.
So
I think that probably fingers will be worked on faster than most other extremities for AI. For other non-related reasons, there's probably going to be a lot of innovation related to AI-driven fingers in the near future.
If you ever want to have a horrific experience with stuff that goes wrong, Boston Robotics, love the company. They used to be owned by Google. I think they spun them off now. I love their honesty and integrity with it, because even though you'll see those awesome videos of the dog jumping and landing fine, they also publish their blooper reel, which is
huge.
And it's awesome to see. And they've got some where they do stuff with fruits, and they do this, and for every one where it's nice and it turns and plucks it perfect, 30 where it just smashes the apple in a billion pieces, and you're like, oh, dude, like, oh God, I didn't even see that. So I appreciate the honesty on their part.
Yeah.
So but and to piggyback on Phil's thing, it's not magic. And I say this at a lot of conferences, particularly ones that aren't filled with a room of nerds, because we already know this all anyways. It's not magic, it's mathematics. That's really what this is. And AI can never be 0 and can never be 100, because it thinks in terms of probabilities. So just like a human, I'm looking at you guys right now, and I am 99.999 to the millionth decimal sure that you're a human, but I'm not 100. And just like if you were to put a mannequin in front of you right now, I'd be like 99.999% sure that it's a mannequin and not a human, but I wouldn't be 0% that it can't be a human. And that's how our brains work. It's all probability mathematics. Same thing with AI.
Get way worse in the near future. That's going to be hard to do.
Oh, I already got some. Yeah. Trust me, all the stuff that's going to come online is going to make people really appreciate human interaction again.
Yeah.
The deep fakes are in maybe the first inning. They're going to get stupid good in the next few years, to where pretty much you're going to have to go in person to validate something.
My business partners have already forced me to do so many different things. I've got my voice is integrated into an AI. I've been 3D scanned a couple of times now. And my mannerisms are even tracked in different ways. There's so much content online. Anybody could get this for themselves from me as well. There could be complete fakes of me saying anything that I wanted to. And, if I ever get sued by Hague or somebody, I'm going to say that it was probably AI anyway. So
are you going to bribe me not to say how much you love the carriers in a deep fake?
Right. No, if you ever hear me praising certain carriers, and you probably know which ones I'm saying, probably fake. Anyway, Ryan, we got to let you go. We've gone overtime. We don't bring nerds on the show very often, because I seem to be one of the few ones that really enjoys it, but you're enjoyable to watch. So I appreciate you coming on. Real quick, I want to talk about Claim Titan. If you're a public adjuster or even an estimator or an appraiser, Claim Titan is a CRM that can solve most, if not all, of your problems. It's damn good. Take a look at Claim Titan. I've got another video that's going to be posting very soon about all the new features they got coming out. Building Experts Institute is a school for online training. Go at your own pace stuff. Very in-depth, very detailed. Most of the courses on there are taught by me, but not the ones that are coming out. We've got different experts coming out for all the different things that are coming up. Take a look at that. You can even get Xactimate training level 1, 2, and 3 on there, all for $109 a month. You get access to all the classes for that. Hook Agency, if you're a roofer, they are one of the best agencies for marketing purposes. They are so good at their job, so good at sales, that they convinced me to get a tattoo at a convention, as squiggly as it is. And I'm afraid of needles. I'll never get it fixed. American Policyholder Association is a group of individuals dedicated to exposing and prosecuting against insurance fraud committed by insurance carriers. And then there's Huggins Law Firm. I'll let Remington handle that.
Huggins Law Firm, we're here for the policyholders. That's all I got to say.
For the people, he said. I think that one's taken.
I said for the policyholders. I did not say people.
Oh, that's a very different thing. That's true. All right, cool. All right, Ryan, it's been a pleasure. We'll have you on again, but we're not going to talk about AI drones. Apparently, Remington has.
Unless something new comes up, I want to know if something new comes out. Let's talk about it.
Right.
Okay.
Sounds good. We can talk AI hunting techniques next time.
There you go.
I think that's illegal.
Depends upon the state.
Yep.
Remington's like, yep.
I agree to that.
Yeah. All right. I'll see you guys next Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Don't forget to subscribe.